Coming up tonight on VCU InSight.
I'm Kairos Manzanares, and I'll tell you about the heating issue in Creighton Core and what's being done to keep residents warm.
I'm Jasmine Reduced, and I sat down with a multiple sclerosis victim who said that medical marijuana helped him save his life. Coming up.
I'm Cynthia Beasley, and I'll take you inside the Richmond City Justice Center, where I spoke with 2 inmates who said the feminine hygiene products here are worthless.
All this and more.
VCU InSight starts right now.
From the Richard T. Robertson School of Media and Culture at Virginia Commonwealth University, named Best Student Newscast in the Mid-Atlantic, this is VCU InSight.
Good evening. Welcome to VCU InSight. I'm Jack Ladano.
And I'm Valeria Collardo. Thanks for joining us. On July 1st, you can expect to pay more when you dine in Richmond. The City Council voted in favor of Mayor Stoney's meal tax increase. The new tax revenue will help fund the rebuilding and renovation of Richmond City's Richmond schools. VCU InSight Leah Butchman has more on the story. Leah?
That's right, Val. The Richmond City Council did approve the new tax in a 7-2 vote. This comes weeks after controversy from restaurant owners and some locals who say they're being unfairly singled out, in which the money would come from more sources rather than just restaurants.
And, just making it clear that we are for fixing the schools. We just think that it should be spread a little bit more and there should be a little more visibility.
That was Jason Thrasher, the owner of the Richmond restaurant and bar The Local. He says the meals tax unfairly targets Richmond restaurant owners. Thrasher is one of the many restaurant owners that oppose Mayor Stoney's meals tax increase. He says now that the city council passed the increase, he thinks there will be a decline in people dining out in the city.
When you take off that percent, that's less that they can buy in food or drinks for their party. So they go to Henrico or Chesterfield where they can get more bang.
Richmond City Council approved a meals tax increase from 6 to 7%. This will generate $9.1 million and allow the city to expand the debt capacity up to $150 million. That money will be used to renovate and build city schools over the next 5 years. This new funding is something Mayor Stoney has been pushing for since he got into office. In a statement from him, he says that the city is sending a strong message to his students by approving this, and that he will continue to be a champion for local businesses to help to find ways to make their lives easier. This is something that Jake Crocker, who co-owns 3 Richmond restaurants, strongly disagrees with.
Words are nice, but there's nothing that he can do. This is our big issue.
Even though Crocker disagrees with the new tax, he still is optimistic about the future.
Established restaurants are going to, we're going to fight, we're going to survive, we're going to do what we have to do.
Now, all the money generated from this tax we place in a special revenue only to be used in the funding of Richmond City School facilities. For VCU InSight, I'm Leah Bookman.
Virginia is on its way to becoming a state where doctors can prescribe cannabis oils to patients in need. Jasmine Aduz has more on the story.
I really believe that medical marijuana has assisted me in managing this horrible disease.
Ray Boone Jr. said he's from Richmond with multiple sclerosis and would have to go to D.C. for medical marijuana because under current Virginia law, cannabis oil cannot treat his condition.
At this time, only people with epilepsy can be treated with cannabis oil in Virginia and have to register at the Department of Health.
There are many other medical conditions, and optician David Lambert shares what cannabis oil can treat.
We deal with a lot of different symptoms and issues and stuff, and one of them is dry eye, which causes from like basically inflammation of around the eye area and blocks the tear duct.
Lambert says that he focuses on nutraceuticals, which are natural products.
The hemp oil we recommend that will help. It's an anti-inflammatory, so it helps with reducing that inflammation around the eye, as well in the whole body as well. But
Boone Jr. said he was in the hospital for 3 weeks with the bill of $88,000, all for the physicians to tell him there is no cure.
There's no way in the world you could speak it quietly. You have to make it very clear to whomever you're speaking to. Get out of my life.
The bill is now on Governor Ralph Northam's desk and is awaiting his signature to be a supporter of expanding the use of medical marijuana.
50 families in Creighton Court have been without heat since last October. Our CARE's Manzanares spoke with the Richmond Redevelopment Housing Authority about this issue.
According to the Richmond Housing Authority, heating systems failed in Creighton Court due to old radiators and blocked pipes. The interim CEO of the Housing Authority, Orlando Arce, says that the problem is not enough funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
They provide all of our funding for capital improvements at the properties, including being able to replace and repair boilers as well as these piping systems.
Over the last 10 years, the funding has declined and is now at $6 million a year.
We have about 4,000 apartments. The assessments that we've done have determined that we need about $150 million.
Despite the financial challenge, the RRHA said it's committed to its residents and has already begun repairs installing baseboard heat, with a new feature that allows residents to control their temperature settings. While the units are being repaired, the Housing Authority has moved families into units where the heat is working, and some families were even offered free hotel rooms with extended stays to keep them warm. Neil Amin of Shaman Hotel says that after reading about what was happening in Creighton Court, he immediately contacted the Housing Authority to see how he could help.
The residents were having a hard time having heat in their apartments, and that's our business. Our business is providing shelter for guests and for travelers, and it made a lot of sense for us to reach out and help these people.
Repairs are still ongoing and are set to finish in late March, but in the meantime, residents do have somewhere to stay.
We will continue to let them live in the building. We have no plans to kick anybody out.
For VCU InSight, I'm Kairos Manzanares.
The Housing Authority has already repaired 37 units, and repairs are on schedule to be completed by the end of March.
It's been 50 years since the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., yet his son, Martin Luther King III, continues to fight for civil rights. King spoke at an event at VCU where he met with students and spoke with Richmond community members. He addressed recent events that have plagued America, such as the Parkland shooting in Florida and the deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville last August. But King insisted that it only takes a few good women and men to bring about change.
One of the most important things about the I Have a Dream speech that I want everyone to understand is that he did not intend for it to be just a dream. Instead, he intended that it be taken seriously as a realistic vision by all Americans of goodwill, and that we would work together to make it a reality.
King praised VCU for the progress they've made for promoting diversity and says the university is making a contribution to upholding his father's dream.
It's been just over 2 weeks since the mass shooting at that Florida high school. Students who survived have been spearheading the effort for expanded gun laws. VCU InSight's Maddie Jones is in the studio today with someone who has personal experience with the trauma of a school shooting.
I'm here today with Laurie Haas, whose daughter was shot twice in the head during the Virginia Tech shooting in 2007 and survived. Since then, she has made it her life's mission to preventing gun violence and serves as the Virginia director for the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. Thank you for joining us today, Laurie.
Thank you for having me.
It has been over 10 years since the Virginia Tech shooting, which left 32 dead, and with this recent shooting in Parkland, Florida, which left 17 dead, why do you think school shootings continue to happen?
We know that in this country we allow easy access to weapons of war. Assault weapons have no place in our streets, and they have no place in civilian hands. They can do eminently more damage in a much shorter amount of time. They were designed and manufactured to kill as many people as possible in as short amount of time as possible.
And with this shooting, it seems like the aftermath is a little bit different because we were able to see inside videos of what actually was happening through students posting on social media. How do you think that has played an effect?
I think it does have an effect. There's been a debate in the gun violence prevention movement, how graphic to get or not get with regard to pictures or video or information or photos. The reality is gun violence is ugly, it's horrible. The bullets from these assault weapons destroy the body, absolutely unequivocally destroy the body. One of the parents from the Sandy Hook shooting told me her son's body was hamburger.
Wow. And the students from the shooting in Florida have been called activists, and they have been participating in walkouts across the country as well. Do you think that's an effective form of protest?
Absolutely. I think that the students have a voice, and deserve to be listened to. They're our future, and we need to be listening to them. Many of them have grown up in the era of what, since Columbine happened in 1999, and school shootings have only increased in frequency, in number, and in lethality. They continue to grow. It's our elected leaders are failing as the citizens and the children in this country.
Now, with Ralph Northam recently being elected as our governor, he has been quoted saying, "We do not need assault weapons on our streets." Do you have faith in his administration that they will take some action on gun regulation?
His administration has already taken action. They put in a bill in the 2018 Virginia General Assembly session that is currently going on, and the last day of session is March 10th. Unfortunately, the Republicans in control of the House and in control of the Senate did not let any of the bills pass. They killed all the bills that would have done more to prevent gun violence. Things like background checks and an assault weapons ban, restricting guns to domestic abusers, child access, and laws that would narrowly focus attention on people at risk of future violence and people in crisis, and disarm them. So his administration is all in. What we are seeing is a firewall, by Republicans elected to the House and Senate. And they're just in bed with the gun lobby.
Mm-hmm. Where can people go to find out more information about what you do for the Coalition Against Gun Violence?
It's the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. We're a nonprofit. We're located in Washington, D.C. I live and work in Richmond and across the Commonwealth, but our website is csgv.org, and that's the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you.
Basic human hygiene is a serious issue in Virginia's jails and prisons. Virginia's House of Delegates has voted unanimously to make a change that will affect every woman incarcerated in the state.
That's right, Jack. We're talking about the fight for menstrual equity. This is a movement to make feminine hygiene products available to everyone, not only in our state, but also throughout the country. Virginia Delegate Kay Corey told me that it was hearing horrible stories from women behind bars that compelled her to take action.
This is one of the free state pads that we get. This right here is one of the state pads that we get.
Bloody uniforms and discomfort are few of many hardships these women have to deal with every month. And this is all that is offered for free to women at the Richmond City Justice Center to manage their periods.
We're allowed 4 or 5 at a time. But these here do not absorb anything at all.
Spread them out, just, do the best way we can.
Always got to run to the bathroom. Did I leak here? Did I leak there?
For those who do have a job or money from family, they can buy 2 types of tampons.
It's 10 in a box for $5.
I don't have a job, so it's really hard for me to get the products.
Virginia Delegate Kay Corey's bill could change the lives of the women here at the Richmond City Justice Center and jails across the state by giving them access to pads and tampons of all absorbency levels, an option that they don't have now.
Give the women what they need at no cost when they need it, and their choice of types of products.
In August, the Department of Justice set the standard for federal prisons on menstrual products. Corey's bill will do so on the state level. Corey also notes there will be no cost to taxpayers, as the Department of Corrections has agreed to absorb the costs. In only 2 months, new Sheriff Antoinette Irving has already taken action by installing sanitary disposal boxes in restrooms.
A safety of an individual is not just whether or not someone does something to them, but the safety of an individual is also whether or not we can provide for the needs of an individual.
I hope and pray it goes through. I really do, because it would make things a heck of a lot better.
Delegate Corey says the bill will go into effect July 1st or sooner if Governor Northam signs it into law. But for now, I'm Cynthia Beasley for VCU InSight.
Puerto Rico is dying. That's the hashtag Richmond photographer Stephen Casanova is using to describe the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. VCU InSight reporter Alan Rodriguez brings us more on the conditions Americans are facing in Puerto Rico.
Like many Puerto Ricans after Hurricane Maria, Stephen Casanova's art exhibit lives in darkness. Shine a light and you will find a Puerto Rican flag laid out on the floor. Dressed in FEMA uniforms, Stephen and his peers fold the flag as they mourn the aftermath of Hurricane Maria.
Not only are people dying, but the entire culture, island, infrastructure, economy, social, everything is crumbling.
Despite making landfall last September, the effects of the hurricane are still being felt.
The things that are just horrendously happening are not hitting the media at all.
Professor Anita Nadal says a lack of coverage is hindering the efforts to heal Puerto Rico.
You're not hearing about it in the news, no one's talking about it, so everyone just assumes that everything's okay now.
This lack of awareness extends beyond the hurricane.
46% of U.S. citizens did not know Puerto Ricans were also U.S. citizens.
When's the last time you flipped on a light switch or had some clean drinking water? For some people in Puerto Rico, it's been over 150 days. Nadal says that this crisis has been a wake-up call.
Se nos han abierto los ojos. Our eyes are open now. That false sense of security of how the U.S. is going to take care of us and everything's going to be okay, we're U.S. citizens, that was totally demolished.
At his show, Stephen raises money for those who lost their farms to the hurricane.
If we are to rebuild Puerto Rico, we have to start with a strong foundation, and that's investing in the land and investing in the people that work the land.
Nadal will continue to make a difference in the best way she knows.
Educate the public and help them to see that it's still a tragedy and they still need help.
For VCU InSight, I'm Alan Rodriguez.
If you want to help Stephen raise money for the Puerto Rican farmers who have lost everything, visit youcaring.com/labridaga.
A petition regarding VCU RAMSafe, a transportation system for VCU students, faculty, and staff, is circulating the web. Our Karis Manzanares is live and has details about what's going on. Karis?
That's right, Jack. The petition was started by a VCU sophomore who waited over 45 minutes for RAMSafe to pick them up. This student says that when the demand for rides increase, the service somehow seems to fall apart.
It was the most unsafe. I didn't have.
This is Sarah Brennan, who says that an experience she had with RAMSafe was her tipping point.
It took them 20 minutes alone to assign me. They said it was going to be there in 6 minutes, so I packed up and went downstairs, and it took another 20 minutes for them to get to me. By then, my phone had died. I was alone on Broad Street at 1 in the morning almost. Like, I had no way of contacting my friends.
She took to Facebook to share what had happened and was soon flooded by comments from other students. Some students said they walked home after waiting too long for RAMSafe. One student even said the RAMSafe they ordered passed them by multiple times before picking them up.
After Sarah's petition, VCU Parking and Transportation Services admit that RAMSafe does need improvements, and they are looking forward to working with her and students to make RAMSafe safer.
The director of VCU Parking and Transportation, Clayton Harrington, says that these long wait times are unacceptable.
So 75 minutes and 45 minutes for a ride is obviously way more than is acceptable.
Sarah agrees, saying that she chose VCU for its advertised safety precautions and was let down by this service.
It just didn't feel right, like, to be at a school like this that promotes their safety as one of their #1 things, to feel that unsafe.
I think RAMSafe is still safe. I think it is. I think it has been safe. I think it will continue to be safe.
VCU Transportation Services told me that students should already be seeing lower wait times, as an additional RAMSafe bus is running during peak hours. For VCU InSight, I'm Karis Manzanares.
$92 million. That's how much VCU plans to spend this fall on their expansion of the School of Engineering's East Hall building. As part of VCU's 2020 Master Site Plan, the engineering building is receiving a career services center, a 9,000 square foot innovation space, and various research labs. The construction will take place on the lawn connecting the East Engineering and Business Building. VCU plans to finish the expansion in the fall of 2020. For more information, you can visit masterplan.vcu.edu.
The Jericho Movement advocates for amnesty and freedom of political prisoners. Our very own Brianna Scott is in studio today with Jericho's national chairperson and former Black Panther member Jihad Abdul Muhammad to talk about activist efforts today. Brianna?
I'm here today with Jihad Abdul Muhammad, a community activist, motivational speaker, community case manager at a free health clinic, and a playwright. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brianna. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So you joined the Black Panther movement at just 16 years old, and today we're seeing more and more young people like the folks in Parkland, Florida, joining movements. But what does it take to effectively mobilize and stabilize an effective movement?
Well, I guess it would take the commitment, and the understanding of what it is. I think today, as before, some sustainability. That means you're having a strategy. So a lot of times you're just responding to an issue. And it was even said with Parkland, I think, hearing a couple of times on the news, was concern that, the emotions about the egregious act that took place, after a while, it won't be on the news anymore. And then after a while, people will be into the 24/7 of their grind of livelihood and stuff like that. So sustainability is important. Keep that type of energy up. And that calls for a good strategy and proactiveness. I think young folks can do it better than somebody old like me.
And so the Jericho Movement, what are you guys currently doing in terms of getting amnesty for political prisoners?
Right. Well, we work with those political prisoners primarily that's from movements of the Civil Rights era and the Black Liberation Movement era, and all those movements are socialist movements from back in the 60s and the 70s primarily. Those have been in prison for about 40, 50 years. So because of that, we deal with their health needs. They go into the Pro Board. We try to get campaigns going to get their support. We started this international initiative in the spirit of Nelson Mandela to try to get international support through the United Nations, to bear weight on the government, to try to shame them or whatever, to be honest with you, to try to get more recognition so when we place requests in for commutation of sentences or pardons, the chances of that happening would be great, because the United States denies that they have any political prisoners. The only country in the world that doesn't have any. We have absolutely no problems, just to be facetious about it. But the fact of the matter, they are political prisoners and they do exist, and it is a human rights violation to have them in prison.
And so I'm glad you brought that up. You yourself spent 20 years in prison for your involvement with the Black Panther movement and the Black Liberation Army. And like you were saying, America doesn't really recognize that we have political prisoners, but they more so think about that in other countries. So what defines a political prisoner in America?
Well, a couple of things, but going aligned with the United Nations definition of political prisoners, those who are incarcerated because of their political views and actions against oppression, repression, or whatever the case may be, and they're in prison because of that. Political prisoners of war are those that may have actually taken up arms to fight against that. And I was considered a POW because we fought with weapons. I was part of the Black Liberation Army, and back then, so somebody may say, oh my God, wow, what now? But I say, when you look at a history book and you see Nat Turner, however you view him, you're looking at a criminal or you're looking at some historical figure, a hero as such. However you view them is how you view us, to be honest with you. Because we have a right to self-defense and police egregious activities in our community, police brutality, the same things you see today. Sometimes people pick up weapons to defend themselves. And I think that's your human right to be able to do that. And people and nations have done it all around the world. United States history is built upon that. But when it comes to our fighting and our struggling and our defending our communities, they would have us to be looked at as criminals.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for giving us insight today. Thank you. That was Jihad Abdul Mumit.
Thank you.
Under the stairs of VCU's Franklin Street Gym, one VCU office is specializing in printing historic artifacts, but not on a piece of paper. InSight's Kimberly Strother has more.
For Black History Month, the VCU Curation Laboratory has paired with the National Park Service to print 3D replicas of 19th century African-American abolitionist Frederick Douglass. 3D printing is the process of scanning an object and creating a layered three-dimensional image from that scan. Dr. Bernard Means, the lab's director and VCU anthropology instructor, sees the importance of bringing history into the hands of students rather than simply reading it on a page.
It's a great way to sort of spark conversations. It's a great way to get people to sort of think about things. A lot of people are tactile learners. They learn not just from seeing things, but actually feeling them and getting an appreciation for the size of the objects and the shape of the objects.
Dr. Means says the lab is the premier place for 3D printed artifacts. Even his business card is following the trend. With the help of interns and VCU anthropology students like Casper Schaefer, the lab has discovered artifacts and items from Douglass's home and travels.
it puts archaeology in people's hands so that they can appreciate it and gets it out there, increase awareness of archaeology without potentially allowing people to harm the original artifacts.
Thanks to the Curation Lab, we now have a better look at who Frederick Douglass is and not just what we've read in our textbooks. For VCU InSight, I'm Kimberly Strother.
Douglass 3D printed items will be on display at the Frederick Douglass Historic Site in D.C. following his bicentennial celebration.
One of man's best friends is seeking a forever home in Richmond. Tally, like many others in shelters, is having a hard time being adopted. In a 2015 pet breed study, pit bulls were found to be the most common dog to be in a shelter because of the negative stigma attached to them. According to Richmond Animal Care and Control, the majority of dogs in need of homes in the shelters are pit bulls. Though their bad reputations cause these pups to fill the pounds, Caroline Craigle, the woman fostering Tally, says that he is proof that pit bulls are just misunderstood.
Pit bulls don't get the certain kind of respect and love from people, and it's really sad. I don't think any animal should be treated like that.
You can meet more dogs up for adoption at Richmond Animal Care and Control, located at 1600 Chamberlain Avenue. In our last episode of Insight, we spoke with track and field coach John Riley. The team was preparing to compete for a 4th straight Atlantic 10 championship. Well, now, the quest is over. The women's team traveled to Rhode Island and they were victorious. The team overcame a 7th place finish on day 1 to move ahead of the pack by the end of day 2. For senior Denisha Smith, it's something she'll never forget.
It's a feeling that I honestly just can't even describe because it is my last year and I feel like we brought all the energy and we've been working really, really hard. So I feel like we were well deserving of the championship.
The Rams say they're already hungry for their outdoor season. That begins March 10th at the Coastal Carolina Invitational.
Richmond City Mayor LeVar Stoney, VCU President Dr. Michael Rowell, and hundreds of others gathered recently to celebrate the life of Dr. Gracie Harris. The Richmond icon passed away this month at the age of 84. Harris was one of the first black faculty members in VCU's history, and in 1982, she became the first African-American woman to serve as Chief of Academic Officer at a 4-year institution in Virginia. She retired in 2015. Dr. Harris is survived by her husband, James W. Harris, her 2 children, and grandson. For those who would like to contribute, her family invites you to give to the Gracie Harris Scholarship in her memory at support.vcu.edu/give. And that does it for this edition of VCU InSight.
Make sure to check out our website at insight.vcu.edu.
You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under VCU InSight. Contact us with any stories you'd like to see on our show.
And if you missed our show or you'd like to watch it again, you can find us on YouTube at VCU InSight. Thanks for watching. I'm Jack Ladonna.
And I'm Valeria Clardo. We'll see you next time.